Okay, welcome to our meeting on the 19th of July. It's the first day of Freedom Day, which has gone not according to plan, I think, given that the Prime Minister is in self-isolation at Chequers, with a little bit of flip-flopping in the meantime. So I think they got there in the end. And I suspect that's probably going to continue for a while. We've got a member of staff who's was messaging me last night about 9 o'clock-ish because they got pinged, which was a bit confusing because they'd got pinged on day 5 or 6 of 10. So I don't know what happened to the system in the first 5 days because they hadn't got pinged, but they're now having to bring forward a week's holiday. Excellent. So who have we got? There was Andrew, just see earlier. I'll just try and find Andrew. 1 second. There's Andrew. I think you did introduce yourself, but if you want to introduce yourself again, Andrew, because I was a bit distracted by the IT issues. Apologies.
Certainly, thank you. Thank you to John Saunders for inviting me today. I'm in the Montfort Rotary Club, and hello from President Teresa, second time around President. I'm here because of Ollie, your speaker. I suppose I've managed to raise in total over the last 10 years, I suppose, £10,000 towards a blood bike, which just about buys the bike but doesn't equip it. So there's another £10,000 to go to try and meet my personal target of providing Ollie with a shiny motorcycle to ride around on. So, thank you, and I hope you're all well and enjoying Freedom Day.
Cheers, thank you very much, Andrew. Muriel, do you want to say hello?
Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm Muriel Harris from the Rotary Club of Prospect Goshen in the US, in Kentucky. And I'm here as a guest of Rotarian Muriel, who doesn't seem to be on right now. I'm her guest. I am a past president of my club. I'm currently the International Service Committee Chair, and got a project in Haiti. But thanks for all you do as Rotarians, and happy to be with you this morning.
Thank you very much for joining us, Muriel. I think that's it. I don't think we've got any other guests, have we? I don't think I've missed anyone. Do we have any greetings from other clubs? No, can't see any of the greetings. Right. President's remarks. Well, as I think I mentioned last week, we had the council meeting that approved the Books for Home project. I've subsequently had an email with a lady called Beverly, who's another Rotarian who originally started this project at, I think it's Worcester Rotary Club. So I'm going to give her a phone call this week and hopefully have a chat. But we have put details of it on the website now. So we've got it both on a news item and also as a specific project page. So if people want to check that out on the website and on our various social media pages and share that, that would be great. Still trying to finalise all the details of it, but I've had an initial email conversation with a lady from Orchard Mead Academy, and I think it might not go too far too quickly for the next few weeks because, of course, we're on the school holidays, so timing of it hasn't been ideal. But that said, I did get interest from I would say one of my neighbours, but not really one of my neighbours, one of the other people in Oadby who's on a social media site called Nextdoor about donating some books. So if we can share the posts and things like that, hopefully we can get some donations of good quality children's books before the school restarts, so we're in an even better position to hit the ground running, which would be great. Bags for the homeless, I'm just waiting for Melton Mowbray Beaver Club to come back to me about that, but again, that's progressing. Barry, do you have any secretary's notices?
No.
No, excellent. Any committee chairman would like to report? I'll just double check tonight. No. Fine. So in that case, I will pass on to our speaker, Oliver Cufflin, who is speaking about he's the chairman of Leicestershire and Rutland Blood Bikes, and doing his talk, Blood Bikes, not your normal bunch of bikers. Cheers. Thank you, Ollie. You need to mute yourself, Ollie.
Well, I should be on microphone, so can you hear me? Am I coming through?
Still saying, it's on the thing, okay, it's saying muted.
Let's have a little look here. Okay, how's that?
Yeah.
Any nods?
Yeah, we got some thumbs up.
Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me here. It's great to be face to face, even though limited in the room here. It's been a very, very strange, just hold on 1 minute. Yeah, great to be, I think you still need to turn your sound off. 2 seconds. Yeah, great to be here. Some of you will know my brother, Ed Cufflin. He did warn me that I'm a bit of a guinea pig today with the technology and going for a semi-face-to-face, semi-technology meeting. So bear with us if some of the technology trips us up. I'm going to share some slides on the screen, which will save you looking at me the whole time. But I think depending how whiz you are with the Zoom, you can look at me and look at the slides. So the slides will help me stay on track a little bit and also enable you to follow what I'd like to share with you. So thank you for the introduction. I'd like to talk a little bit today about the blood bikes, Leicestershire Rutland Blood Bikes. Some of you may have heard about us, especially those of you from the De Montfort Rotary. Enjoyed a very pleasant few breakfasts with you there. And sharing with you on that. So you can check that I'm sharing the same information today as I have with you. Let me share my screen then, and I'll start sharing a little bit about the blood bikes. So I hope that's coming through. Am I coming through okay? Okay, good. I'll close this one. So Leicestershire and Rutland Blood Bikes, what I'd like to do is try in the next 15, 20 minutes or so, enable you to have an understanding about who we are, what we do, how the Leicestershire and Rutland Blood Bike organisation fits in with the UK-wide blood bike organisation, and give you a little bit of detail about what we do day by day, night by night. I've got a few pictures to show to you. I won't try and show any of the little video clips that I've got because I think we will get tripped up with the technology. So I'll skip past those and just carry on. And then there's some pictures to share that'll come through okay. So first of all, I'd like to talk about who are blood bikes, who are blood bikers. First of all, blood bike organisations are totally voluntary. So all the blood bike members in the Leicestershire and Rutland group, as well as other county blood bike groups, are volunteers. Most people have an interest in motorcycles, but it's not a prerequisite for people who are part of the group. We have a predominance of men in the group, which still seems to be the motorcycling way of the moment, that ladies do ride motorcycles, but it's mainly men. In our group, we have about 55 men and about 5 women, so still very male predominated. We're always looking for new ladies to join. So people in the group generally motorcycle interest, but they don't have to be. Who are blood bikers? They're people who, for one reason or another, want to put something back into the world, and particularly something back into the health part of our society, and in our case, the NHS. Many of our members have some quite moving stories about how they themselves or family members have been very positively impacted by the work of volunteer blood bikers, moving blood samples and the like, or by their children, their babies being given donated breast milk, again, having been moved around, processed and moved to hospital by blood bikers. So many of our members have some very emotive stories about why they do it. Who are blood bikers? They're people with some free time. There's no prerequisite at how much time we would expect people to volunteer in the group. Some people give a lot of time, other people give less, depending on family or work commitments. Where are blood bike groups? So I'm obviously sharing today something about the Leicestershire and Rutland blood bike groups, but there are blood bike organisations throughout Great Britain, Northern Ireland, and now the Republic of Ireland. And every county is served by a blood bike organisation. Scotland, Wales tend to be very large groups split into smaller groups. So we're Leicestershire and Rutland, but there is a Blood Bike Wales covering the whole of Wales, and that's enormous. So they split up into smaller groups. So fantastic that there are these volunteers getting on with their volunteer activities throughout the whole of the nation. Most of the groups are linked to the nationwide Association of Blood Bikes. That is let's call it a parent organization who can act on behalf of all of the 35 to 40 blood bike groups working locally. A couple of examples of how the nationwide association have been able to help what blood bike groups do is recently, or in the last couple of years, the nationwide association have been in discussion with the Chancellor of the Exchequer and all blood bike organisations, even though they're of charitable status, can reclaim VAT on all of their costs. We don't register for VAT, we don't pay VAT to the Chancellor, but the group is recognised by the government as worthy of being allowed to reclaim VAT. So that's a great thing. A second thing the Nationwide Association have done for blood bike groups is to, again, discuss with the government and the Department of Vehicle and Licensing, and all blood bike vehicles in the United Kingdom are exempt from paying any road fund tax. So again, fantastic that on behalf of all of the blood bike groups, the Nationwide Association has been able to work with the government to do that. It's also very useful for the local groups that as a higher authority, the Nationwide Association can share guidelines, procedures, and give guidance on how to make sure that we're operating properly, professionally, and also very importantly with the appropriate health and safety consideration. And on the bottom of my slide there, I think it's always interesting that many organisations, especially volunteer ones, are full of actually quite nice people. Bikers, I think, often get quite a bad press. And if you say to many people, paint me a picture of a motorcyclist, they'll probably be very big chaps, big bushy beards, driving a big Harley Davidson hog, looking quite fearsome. There are some people like that, but generally, nice bunch of people. Good. Okay, so that's a little bit about who are blood bikers and where they are. What I'd like to do now maybe is share in a little bit more detail what blood bike groups actually do day to day. I'm going to be talking specifically about the Leicestershire and Rutland group, but what we do in Leicestershire and Rutland is more or less the same to what the Northamptonshire blood bike group would do, or the Derbyshire group, or whichever group you want to think of. There are a few small differences, but generally what I'll share with you is what other blood bike groups up and down the country will be doing. Maybe one of the first things to share is that although we're a volunteer organisation, we follow the standards and the ethos of the Nationwide Association, which endeavours to make sure that we operate on what we would call a professional quality of service. We offer free, totally free of charge to the hospitals we work with, National Health Service organisation and teams, and the local air ambulance team. And we will offer an out-of-hours courier service, transport service, for whatever needs they have. Mostly, we will move blood samples, blood products, whole blood, patient notes, patient x-rays, and we will do all of that between the hospitals in Leicestershire and Rutland as and when the hospital teams need it. As I say, a professional quality of what we do, so we aim to be recognised in the same way that people would consider the lifeboat institution, the mountain rescue, or the air ambulance teams, all mainly volunteer organisations. But when you see a lifeboat crew, you don't see a ragtag group of people in old boats. So in the same way that you see really professional looking lifeboat crews as blood bike group, we try and do the same. We use our own liveried vehicles that are properly maintained. They look the part, they look professional. And as volunteers, we wear the same uniform. I've got just one of our group polo shirts on at the moment, but we wear a group high-vis, so that when we are visiting the hospital laboratories or the departments, we're looking professional and we're looking part. As I said, we will move for the hospital out of hours. So generally that's night times, weekends and bank holidays. And we'll move predominantly blood samples between hospitals. In Leicestershire and Rutland, most blood samples are tested at the Royal Infirmary. So if you're in the Glenfield Hospital or the General Hospital, which is where people tend to go when they're very poorly, if you've got a blood sample that needs testing overnight, it has to be moved to the Royal Infirmary for testing. Test results go back to the doctors so that later on in the evening or the next morning, the doctors know what to do or what illness people might have. But we'll also deliver tissue samples. So we will support the General Hospital taking tissue samples actually all the way to Cambridge to Addenbrooke's Hospital, where Leicestershire and Rutland patients are waiting to be matched for organ transplants. We'll take tissue samples over to Addenbrooke's for matching. We don't take the organs around, but it could well be the next day the patient who has a successful match could be having an organ transplant the next day following the movement of the sample overnight. We'll also move x-rays. Quite bizarrely, I find in today's world of technology, a lot of patient notes are still kept on paper in folders. So occasionally patients are moved between hospitals and their notes sometimes don't go with them. So we will support the hospital moving patient notes overnight, during the night, where a patient has had to move hospitals. And we'll move medicine, and we'll also move sampling, blood testing equipment where it needs to be updated or changed if it's broken. In addition to supporting the hospital, we also support the air ambulance, and 7 days a week we will take blood from the Walsgrave Hospital over to the East Midlands Airport, where it will be taken by the Leicestershire Air Ambulance if it's called out to trauma scenes. Before we did that, the air ambulance had no means of getting actual blood to the helicopters, so they simply took saline solution. So it's been great to be able to support the air ambulance so that they can take blood out to trauma scenes. And a third part of our arm, if I can call it that, is that we will support donating mothers in Leicestershire and Rutland who donate breast milk for the support of prematurely born babies. Before we offered our service, donating mothers had to take milk they wanted to donate themselves. They had to take it to Birmingham Women's Hospital, which is where it's processed. But we come along and working with the Birmingham Women's Hospital, we're asked to go pick up the donated milk, which is frozen, and we take it to Birmingham for processing, and then they share it with the neonatal wards to support prematurely born babies. So that's kind of fundamentally what we do as a blood bike group. We replace taxi companies and courier companies, which up until the formation of blood bike groups, hospital departments depended on for their out-of-hours service. So we weren't actually new in terms of moving things, but we were able to support the hospital with free of charge movement because we raise our own funds and we offer our service free of charge, which enables the hospital to put money back into frontline patient care rather than paying what can be expensive taxi fares and or courier companies. Interestingly, what the hospital teams value even more than the free of charge service is the fact that we're there ready to help them when they call us. Taxi companies have been known to be late arriving over the years, and taxi companies also, we hear from some of the lab staff, will pick up some blood samples, disappear off and be gone for several hours because they've picked up a fare. So actually what the hospital teams value even more than the free of charge is the fact we're there to help them, and that's all we do. And finally, what do we do as a group? Like many charities, we raise funds through events, through public, through companies, and we fund what we do entirely ourselves. We run our own vehicles, we fuel it ourselves, we pay for the insurance and the upkeep, etc., etc. So what we do costs the hospitals absolutely nothing. Okay, so that's what we do. We've got a picture of what blood bike groups are nationally. So typically, let me share with you what happens during a night time. We have 2 volunteers working in a shift, as we would call it, at a night time. So tonight, for example, we'll have 1 person who will man our telephone number. So the hospitals call our group number, not the riders or the drivers directly. And our controller then will handle the incoming calls, will contact the volunteer rider, send them on their way, make sure they're safe, they're not lost, they get to the right place at the right time, and act really as a kind of guardian angel, if you want to call it that, to make sure that they're okay. It's very important that people are safe in what they do. And say somebody is taking a sample to Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge, it would be very embarrassing if they broke down by the side of the road somewhere where there's no signal and they're stuck there for 4 hours on their own. So it's a nice way that the controllers can keep an eye on them and make sure that they're safe and get to the right place. So the hospital will call our number, the controller will answer the phone, will listen to what the requirement is, speak to the volunteer rider for the night, send them on their way. The rider, who will have picked up the vehicle earlier in the evening, taken it home to wait, will get on the bike, will go and pick up the blood sample, the patient notes, whatever it is, will transport it to where it's being delivered to, drop it off, and check back in with the controller to see if there's anything else needs doing. If there is, they'll do that. If not, they go back home and wait for the next call. Typically in a night, the volunteer will get 4 or 5, maybe 6 things to do, but bearing in mind it's probably an hour round trip to do a pickup and a delivery, 5 or 6 calls is actually a pretty busy night, and the volunteers are actually on the road or at the hospitals for most of their nighttime shift. All our members are volunteers, as I mentioned. About half of them are retired or work part-time, and the other half are actually working people, or they have jobs. Working people, strange phrase. So they work. So some people will take the morning off after their night shift. So they plan their shifts around what they do for a job. And finally, the note on the slide there is an interesting one, and there's a photo to show this shortly, is that occasionally there are samples being moved to very specialist test centres. Recently, we were asked to help move a sample from Scotland down to Southampton. So the Northumbria blood bike group picked it up from the borders, drove it down towards the Midland. We picked it up from them somewhere near Stafford, drove it down to Northampton. The Northamptonshire group picked it up, etc., and daisy-chained it down to Southampton. It intrigued me, that one, and I found out that actually Southampton was one of the UK test centres for tropical diseases. So somebody had come back to Scotland from a location, picked up what they thought was a tropical disease. Their blood sample had to get to Southampton. So it's a nice way that those blood bike groups up and down the country can link together and, where necessary, move stuff much longer distances. Okay, good. So let's move along a little bit. So what I've got here to share with you is some 2020 statistics of what the Leicestershire and Rutland Blood Bike groups did. 2020 was, of course, a strange year in many ways. We had fewer regular blood sample movements, but we also supported the hospital moving COVID samples. So the numbers of deliveries and pickups was probably down a little bit overall. But as a field, this is what the Leicestershire and Blood Bike group did in 2020. 100% volunteer group, In our fleet, we have five vehicles. We have 3 motorcycles and we have 2 vans. The vans are great in the winter. I often say there's no brownie points for getting wet on a motorbike. Vans are also very useful when we do events for taking our gazebo and equipment. And it does enable those people who don't ride motorbikes to be part of the group with us. We have, like all good groups, committee members, can't beat a committee meeting, and we have about 55 active members. In 2020, we covered 475 shifts, so a nighttime or a weekend daytime. And bearing in mind there's 2 people on a shift, a phone controller and a rider or a driver, that equates to about 11,400 hours where our volunteers were doing work or available to do the work to help the hospitals. We did a total of 855 NHS sample or patient note movements, and we did 511 air ambulance blood deliveries. We did 56, I've got the 2019 statistics for events because last year we did no events because of COVID, or we did very few. In 2019 is a typical year, we did 56 fundraising events using about 740 volunteer hours for that. And interestingly, our running costs, I say only because £30,000 is still quite a lot of money, but in terms of some big charitable organisations, the basic running cost for us is not that great. So to enable us to keep running the vehicles, to maintain them, a bit of postage, a bit of stationery, a bit of whatever it is, £30,000 is something that we are able to raise year by year. It's still an effort and we're still very, very grateful to the organisations that support us, but it is something that is a reachable target. The one thing that doesn't include is when we need to replace a vehicle. So we do tend to have a special push if we need to raise funds for a replacement vehicle. I'll just show briefly here, this is the nationwide picture in terms of statistics. So this gives you a more general UK feel of what blood bike organisations do. 36 groups up and down the country. Between them, they run 360 vehicles and they serve between them over 230 hospitals or hospital trusts. So, for example, we work with the Leicester Hospital Trust, which covers Glenfield, the General Hospital and the Royal Infirmary. The nationwide picture is over 3,800 volunteers. And in 2019, throughout those 36 groups, there were over 110,000 movements of blood samples, blood products, patient notes, etc. And out of those groups, 13 of them will support their local air ambulances with the movement of blood so that they can take that to the trauma scenes they're called to. I'll quickly show here a little diagram of how our group operates, nothing fancy. I tried to put at the top of the screen here really that whereas I get to stand here as the chairman and talk to you about the group, we still rely 99% of the time on our route supporters for doing what they do day by day, night by night. We have people who ride for us, people who do fundraising, people who answer the phone. We rely on companies and the public to support us financially. And of course, we have a committee doing it. And all of that is underpinned by the Nationwide Association. I just show here a little picture of Leicestershire and Rutland, not because you don't know what Leicestershire and Rutland looks like, but in the middle of the picture, you'll see 3 dots close together. That is, of course, the centre of Leicester, and that is the General Hospital, the Glenfield Hospital and the Royal Infirmary. Leicestershire is a little bit unusual in terms of blood bikes, because if you're very poorly in Leicestershire and Rutland, you'll end up in one of those 3 city centre hospitals. So from a blood bike group organisation, most of what we do is around the city centre. That's very different to many of the more rural counties like Cornwall, Devon, Northumbria, where they will be serving hospitals 50, 60, 70 miles apart. And their volunteers will be doing 350 miles a night volunteering. We, in our group, a little bit soft, some people might say. Our sample runs are 3 miles across town. However, sometimes people need to come in from where they live to do that. So that's a little bit interesting. Little bit of history about the Leicestershire and Rutland group. We first met in May 2014. There was not a blood bike group in Leicestershire and Rutland until then. We actually started serving the hospitals about 2.5 years later. When we first started meeting, I was part of that first meeting with 4 others. We thought, yeah, we'll get this up and running in 3 or 4 months. It won't be difficult. We met up with both the Nottinghamshire group and the Derbyshire group, and they said, no, it's going to take you 2 to 3 years to get going. And I said, no, don't be ridiculous. Of course it won't. But it did, because the NHS is a very big organisation, very bureaucratic, and it did take us 2.5 years till we actually got on the road helping them. We became registered charity in 2015. We're registered with the HMRC for gift aid and VAT reclaims. And the bottom half of the screen really is summarising what I've shared already. So we've been going around about seven years or so. What I share with people generally, people help our group either riding for us. An interesting point I've put there is that we expect all of our motorcycle riders to have passed an advanced motorcycle qualification. Very important that we know that they are independently checked to be decent riders. People can ride for us, they can control using the phones, I've mentioned that. Some members we have will simply help us at events, meet the public, and share literature and share about what the group does. And people give a little time or a lot. And I always share with people, if they're interested in that, the committee is always beckoning you to join. Right, I'm not going to show this video because it won't work so well. So it is just kind of a look what you might have won moment. But there is a short 3 or 4 minute video made by the BBC news channel about 4 or 5 years ago, covering the Oxfordshire blood bikes and the work that they do moving donated breast milk. So it was quite interesting that actually the BBC News felt it newsworthy enough to make a short video. So sorry we can't see that this time, but this is what it might have looked like. And then really maybe to wrap up a little bit, some general pictures. This is one of our bikes with one of our volunteers. So hopefully you get the idea that quite a professional image. The motorcycles we use happen to be the same as the Yamahas the police use. We're not an emergency service, so you won't see a blood bike racing around the city or the county at 120 miles an hour. So we're not an emergency service. We don't use blue lights to race around. We simply move samples quietly and efficiently in a manner that's safe. And that's the image of what you get as a blood bike with a rider. Another picture of one of our bikes. You'll notice on the back of the bike is quite a long rack. That was designed and developed by the Nationwide Association. It's long because it will take 2 standard NHS blood boxes. So frequently when we're asked to move blood or blood samples, there can be 2 boxes. So that very long rack can take 2 boxes. I'm still convinced would be a pretty good pizza delivery service as well, but we haven't tried that one yet. Here's a picture of us typically when we've been to, say, an event at a supermarket. We've always received such a warm welcome wherever we've been, and typically this is what the public will see. We take a gazebo, we take one of the bikes, we chat to people. The bike's a great attention grabber, and people will come and tell us what they do. One of the last events I did, an old chap came to talk, and I saw him shuffling along, and he must have been in his 90s, but he was chatting, and he was actually a motorcycle dispatch rider in France in the Second World War. So it's quite interesting the people you can meet and how a motorbike can link people together. This was at Asda, I think, and it's just an example that they were so keen to get us involved. They said, bring the bike into the shop, which was really quite something. And always get a free coffee. A little picture of the bikes outside Glenfield one winter, just to show we're out in all weathers. So that was a cold day. We took that picture because this was interesting. This was outside the De Montfort Hall, and generally the Leicester City Council are not always supportive of people collecting money at events, but I think they were willing to let us do it because the show, which was the Jersey Boys, they wanted to support us, and in the interval the cast talked about the Blood Bike group, and it was one of the easiest fundraisers we've done because when all the people trooped out, they all had a couple of pounds ready just to put in the bucket. So that was nice. So that's us waiting for the people to come out. We use a little mini motorbike. The kids love sitting on at events, and then it's a kind of bit of emotional blackmail getting the parents to put a pound in the bucket when their kids sit on the bike. This is another picture that I liked because I mentioned the chap that came to talk to me. This lady came to talk to us, and in a hop, skip and a jump, she was on the bike, and she remembered back in the 1940s and 50s, she'd be out with a boyfriend who was a mod or a rocker, I'm not sure which, and reminded her of when she used to go to the seaside on the bike with a boyfriend. Couple of pictures. We've been to support some local carnivals doing some outriding for us. We used, bottom right-hand picture there, of course, the ubiquitous collecting tins. The picture on the right, top right, we don't dress as Star Troopers from Star Wars, but there are some people at the event wanted to come who were dressed as Star Troopers. They wanted to have a picture taken. Some more general pictures, one of our committee meetings. Some companies that have done cake bake for us. Bottom left-hand corner is Ibrahim, who's our membership secretary, dishing out the badges. Someone doing a fun run for us. This was interesting. So Time Products, based in Leicester, that makes Seconda, they actually made for us 200 watches, gave them to us with our logo on and said, we'd like you to use these for fundraising and to give away to people. And so they made 200 watches for us, which was fantastic, really nice. And an example here, so we don't just help the hospitals, we'll also go out and help other people. This was a couple of Christmases ago. We went to Loros, put on some Santa Claus outfits, and we took some toys for the children over at Rainbow, sorry, not Loros. So this was some of our members. Paul there on the left, he actually does look like Father Christmas. So he's a very good chap, apart from the children did try and pull his beard off, which is his real beard. So that was quite amusing. There he is again at a bowling club, just collecting a check. Another picture of one of our group members there. So again, you get a picture of the professional image. Another one. A picture in one of the pathology labs. We took this when we first started, and they couldn't be more appreciative in the pathology labs what we do for them. And so many of our volunteers find doing that and getting a really grateful thank you from the hospital teams is more reward than anything else doing that. And then occasionally what happens is a company will phone us up out of the blue, and this chap from an air conditioning company said, I'd like to donate £1,000. So we went along and received that. So fantastic that somebody we didn't know saw what we did and wanted to donate £1,000 to us. This one, so I mentioned the fact we do relays, sometimes moving samples up and down the country. This one to me almost sums up why it's worthwhile being a blood biker. We were asked to move some blood coming from the northeast of England to a patient, a young child in Leicester suffering from leukemia. So we were able to go and pick the blood up and know that the family were waiting for this blood to arrive to help keep him alive. So this is our volunteer meeting up with the Lincolnshire group to take the blood over to a family that was sitting waiting for the blood to arrive. And finally, to wrap up, just to be able to share with you that really proud that in June 2021, so just a month ago, we were awarded the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service. We were nominated by a member of the public last autumn. We went through quite a rigorous review process with the Lord Lieutenant's team, and we heard at the beginning of June that our group had been awarded the Queen's Award. So that is a tremendous accolade to what the volunteers do. I get to stand here as chairman and take the glory, but it's really all the volunteers that day by day, night by night are doing their work that enable us to have received that award. So on that, I would have shown you another video at this point, but again, sorry, I can't do that. Blood biking actually goes back to the 1960s, and this is a short video that, again, I'm really sorry we can't show it, but it shows what this group did in the 1960s, moving blood around to help the hospitals. I like it because if we see it another day, you'll love some of the styles. It reminds me of my grandmother and her horn rimmed glasses. And my favorite bit of the video, which again, I'm so sorry we can't see it, is a picture of a volunteer mowing his lawn that looks just like my dad did, mowing the lawn on a weekend in his weekend tie and shirt, mowing the lawn with a fag out of his mouth. My brother's laughing here because that's what he did. So sorry I can't show that, but blood biking does trace its roots back 50, 60 years to become what it is today. So thank you. I hope that was interesting. I hope I've been able to share with you what blood bikers do and where they do it. I'm happy to take any questions. I've no idea how much time I've used. Okay. So that's what we do. I can take any questions. I've probably missed some things out. But if nothing else, I hope it gives you a good overview of what we do.
Thanks, Ollie. Stop the
Yeah.
screen share. Fine, thank you very much, Ollie. Just 1 second, let's just see if we've got any questions. We got any questions from anybody? 1 second. Palmdeep, do you want to unmute yourself?
Thanks, Scott. Thank you, Ollie. Wonderful presentation. I wonder how long it will be before you add drones to your fleet.
So did you hear that question? No, so can you repeat the question?
Yes, I'm just wondering how long it will be before you're adding drones to your fleet.
Oh, okay. So that is an interesting question. You might have seen it, maybe you've asked that, because I have seen in Africa that they move some products around via drones because it's an easy way to do it there. So we have no visibility of when we might use drones, but I think it will be the future of moving products, whether it be blood or blood samples, as it might be for groceries. So I think drones will come. I suspect it'll still be several years away, but I think drones will be the way that items are moved around. But I suspect several years, many years perhaps.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. It just calls on Mark Simpson to do the voting minutes.
Can you hear me, President? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hear me? Okay. Well, first of all, I should share with Rotarians the fact that Ollie is a next door neighbour of mine, and I can assure them that he's not a great big hairy biker, and he's not a member of any Hells Angels chapter. Ollie, thanks for a fantastic detailed presentation with illustrations. What a wonderful organisation of dedicated volunteers doing a great job for society as a whole, and all on, as I say, on a volunteer basis. I've no doubt that you thoroughly deserved your Queen's Award. And I have to say, I'm very impressed by the amount of time and dedication that you all put towards your organisation. Thank you very much for coming along and sharing all the information with us. And I'd like my fellow Rotarians to share their appreciation in the usual manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks for that, Mark, and thanks, Ollie. We've got next meeting is we have somebody from the Commonwealth War Graves Commission coming to talk to us about architecture and conservation. I think it's the person that spoke before, I don't have his name to hand, so that should be excellent. There's no meetings after lunch today, so just falls on me to call this meeting adjourned until next week. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Nice to see you, Muriel.
Yeah.